Hey, everybody. It's Weird Islanders, the podcast, back once again. My name is Dan. That is Mike. And Mike, normally I would ask how you're doing, but I don't even need to ask how you're doing because I know that the player we are going to talk about tonight for this episode of Weird Islanders, the podcast, is one of your all-time favorites. He is a man who you have mentioned many, many times. And so my question to you is, how much of this player have you watched in the last couple of days, or are you just going to go straight off of your memory that has been kind of implanted in your brain for almost 20 years now, if you can believe it?
I know. Yeah, it's been a while. But it's almost it feels weird because the memories of that season, that 2001, 2002 season, are still so vivid, and it feel like just yesterday. But I'm happy to admit I've been watching, in preparation for this episode, that I've been watching a good amount of YouTube clips from that season, which is something I would do anyways. I've been on the Peloton watching, Essay of Sab on YouTube posts these great month by month. I don't even epics. Let's just call them an epic for a lot of different Islander seasons. And so I've been watching a lot of these ones on the Peloton. It makes riding a Peloton a lot quicker, and it makes you realize just how likable this group of guys were, because we knew, they were likable because they won, which is what I think people kind of gravitate to with this team. But then when you remember the Fox Sports New York broadcasts and the little interviews they would do, like pre and post and during the games, and the kind of the little montages and vignettes that they'd show, kind of trying to grow the game, you realize just how much personality was in this room, and this player was a sneaky big part of it. He was a huge part of it on the ice, but he was pretty sneaky in terms of the room and turning this team into a very likable group. And of course, he also was a pretty big part of putting even more respect on the Islanders in a season where they finally got back to relevancy.
Yeah, it cannot be overstated how thirsty Islanders fans were for winning hockey. If you go figure that was a big drought before that, and this player definitely was integral to that. And we're going to get all into that with one of our favorite guests. You may remember him from his first season appearance on Weird Islanders, the podcast. You may remember him from his work as the voice of Mike Bossy in the Islanders award winners episodes on Bossy, reading from Bossy's autobiography. Or you may listen to his podcast, Ted and Michael Read Sketches into Microphones. It's hilarious. And he's our good friend, Michael Paul Smith. Michael, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me again. And thank you for allowing me to not do a Canadian accent when I did those Bossy quotes.
You sounded great.
I just kept it simple.
You sounded great. You really
Thank
brought
you.
home the spirit of Bossy. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
So you and Ted, your writing partner Ted, have started a new season of the show this summer. I was listening to it today. It's very funny. Please do more sketches on the Avengers. Like I said, I'm available if you need an Ant-Man. I'm here.
Now that you said that, it's happening.
Yeah. Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So if you had to describe one of you as the Ryan Pullock of the podcast and the other as the Adam Pellick of the podcast, who would you be and who would Ted be?
Oh, I'm Pulak and he is Pellick.
Okay.
Because Ted oftentimes forgets the rules. Like Adam Pellick sometimes forgets the rules of hockey.
Yeah.
And then looks incredulously at a referee. Ted is the guy that I've got to rein in and say, like, oh yeah, we can't say that, man. That's way too dark.
So you're trying to directing traffic out there, much like Ryan Pullock is.
Exactly.
That figures. That makes sense. Well, again, the show is great. We'll talk a little bit more about it towards the end of this episode. But you have picked an all-time. You actually gave us 3 options, and all of them would have been great. But when I presented Mike Leboff with the options, he wasted no time. I don't know if he's ever gotten back to a text of mine as quickly as he did for this one. So I want to get right to it because we have a lot to talk about. Michael Smith, will you please reveal the subject of tonight's episode of Weird Islanders, the podcast?
Tonight's episode will be based on Chris Osgood. A solid Mike acquisition and a lousy Mike departure.
Yeah.
With the benefit of hindsight. Not that Mike Milbury deserves any such qualifiers, but it's worth noting.
as always, there was a reason. We'll get to that when we talk about that. But before we dive into the Chris Osgood Islanders era, reminder that we are on Patreon, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. You can get ad-free episodes of this podcast. You get bonus podcasts, early access, and written posts, and all kinds of stuff. You never know what's going to pop up there. So patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. Plans start as low as $2. So go ahead, do it. Okay, so we begin with the question as always. Why Chris Osgood?
He was so integral to this, like Mike just mentioned, this newfound respectability. He came on when they were dead last, and it was a period. I was in high school, so of course I might be remembering the chronology a little bit wrong, but it was this period of tons of acquisitions, people coming and going. And to me, he was a proven not homegrown player at the perfect time to not be a homegrown player, because you didn't really want to be a homegrown Islander at this time. And he added into my mind, he added the same respectability that Yashin and Peca did. He wasn't super consistent all the time, but he was somebody that I was super excited about as soon as they got him.
Yashin and Peca get all the sort of spotlight because of the trades. Obviously, there's a big splashy, moves to make. Obviously, the Yashin trade cost the Islanders not only Zdeno Chara, but Jason Spezza as well. And, the trade with Buffalo sent Tim Connolly, Taylor Pyatt out there. They had both respectable careers. And Chris Osgood came to the Islanders in just about the least sexy way possible, which was waivers. They had a waiver draft before the season, and he had been with the Red Wings. I don't want to get too far into this yet. I want to give Mike a chance to kind of set the scene here. Before Osgood comes, the Islanders have gotten Peca, Yashin. They've already picked up a coin. They had some guys from the year before, Dave Scatchard, Mariusz Tchaikovsky, Brad Isbister, who looked like they were going to be good. So take us back to that brief moment before the Islanders pick up Chris Osgood. And do you remember how you were feeling about this team going into that season? Because they already made these monumental changes, but their goaltending tandem was going to be Garth Snow and I guess Rick DiPietro, right?
DiPietro, absolutely, yeah. He was playing. I was excited about DiPietro, but he was so young. He was just and you I don't remember if he had the 15-year deal yet. I don't think he did.
No.
Yeah, you just had the sense that he was going to be around for a while. And so, the plan was very clear that that's part of the reason they needed someone with experience. Osgood had already won 2 cups.
Yes.
So it was just it was just a great idea. And you didn't know for sure that DiPietro was going to pan out. But they still weren't playing well.
Right.
So there was that.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? Where do you remember where you were at with this team prior to Osgood's arrival?
Yeah, I do. Because I remember where I was watching the, let's say, I think my family watched Chuck Scarborough. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Stu Simmons.
Yeah, NBC4, right? Chuck Scarborough was?
Yeah.
So I remember NBC4 New York, after 7:00, after we ate dinner or whatever, turning on the TV and watching the sports section in whatever it was, probably June. And they probably showed the Yankees, and there's Tino Martinez looking great. And then they're oh, and by the way, the new Islanders owners introduced 2 new star players. And I just remember the image of Peca and Yashin on this podium, probably at a Westbury hotel, a Marriott in Westbury or something, and flashing lights, and Peca kind of had this really kind of handsome, rugged hockey look to him with great hair. And then Yashin, of course, is the Russian superstar, and being damn, I started going to Islander games a handful of season the years before that. I didn't really grasp, because I was 11 before the season started, but I didn't really grasp the just how bad the Islanders were. To me, it was just the Islanders were bad. They were just going to be bad. That's just what it was. You go to the Islanders game, you watch them lose, you have some fun, you see Niles. It's cheap and fun. You go with friends, and you leave, and whatever. That's just what they always do. So then all of a sudden, when these two guys are on the stage, and they started to sell, even in this like little NBC4 vignette, like there's a lot of buzz around the Islanders. Like maybe they're going to be good. And I kind of just remember thinking and looking at my dad and my like brothers and mom, be like, is that allowed? Like, like the Islanders are allowed to be good. This is something that's going to be possible. I could think about it, right? Like I was 3 years old in 1993, so I couldn't even grasp the idea of the Islanders being good
because you'd
at
never
all.
known them to be.
Right. And all of a sudden these guys come in and they're supposed to be good. And not that I could feel expectations for a sports team as like an 11-year-old with the amount of coverage that you get at that time with very little internet, etc. But it just kind of changed my thinking about this team and realizing, oh no, I'm now a part of this journey about getting this team back. And that was kind of the slogan for the entire season. I actually bought a shirt this summer off eBay for like $10, new with tags. And it was one of the shirts they gave out during that playoff series against the Leafs. It's just that bold squarish font that just says "We're back," and it's sponsored by Remax.
I think I remember those shirts.
Yeah, I have one, and I'm so happy to have it. That's what this kind of, I learned what that meant this season, and at that moment, basically. And then and then we'll get to Osgood coming, and I know where I was when I found out about that one too. And he was just a player to me that I knew from being on good teams.
Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah. So as Michael said, he won 2 cups with the Red Wings. He had spent, I have his thing up here, I want to say 8 seasons. 8 seasons originally. He went, holy shit, that's a rookie. He went 23, 8-5 for the Red Wings in 41 games, and only came in 5th for the Calder. Boy, it's a tough year, I guess. Jeez. He mainly backed up Mike Vernon for the 96 and 97 cups, let's say split time. And it was always this sort of idea that like, Osgood's pretty good, but he wasn't really that good. And what happened was the Red Wings lost in the first round in 2001 with Osgood between the pipes, and they decided that he was the problem. And so that summer, they went out and traded for Dominik Hasek, who was nearing to end of his time in Buffalo. Obviously, this was going to be a problem because Osgood didn't want to be a backup; he wanted to start. So
and they were paying him a lot of money,
and they were paying him a lot of money. Yeah, and so I remember immediately, like the rumors. I'm significantly older than you guys, so I remember this pretty well. Like there were a lot of rumors, like what's going to happen with Osgood? Although they're going to trade him, they're going to move him, they're going to do all this stuff. But as the summer went on, no trades materialized, and coming up towards training camp, the Red Wings had still both Hasek and Osgood on the roster at the same time. And all of a sudden, they're getting towards the point of the season where there's a waiver draft. Now, the waiver draft doesn't exist anymore. They removed it after the 2005 lockout. But basically, this was a time when teams had to get down to a certain roster number, and they wanted to address sort of balance issues. So they had everybody, get. You didn't have to, but if you had multiple guys, you could put them on waivers. Fun fact: the waiver draft is also how the Islanders lost both Bob Bourne and Clark Gillies the same month, the same day, in the late 80s. So the waiver draft giveth and it taketh away.
It's like an expansion draft without the expansion team, basically.
A little bit, yeah. It was about, kind of, again, I think it was mainly due to financial issues and there was this. Right, this was during the expansion era. It started in 1977, so this again was kind of the expansion thing. But
wow.
There's a whole. I mean, when there's a whole Wikipedia page on something, it's kind of significant. So there is a waiver draft Wikipedia page, and it's kind of interesting to read some of the names that have been lost. And so it became like, well, man, this was new general manager of the Red Wings, Ken Holland. And they had to, it seemed like a bit of a failure. I remember at the time to have to put Osgood on waivers, but Holland really didn't have much of a choice. And then it became like, all right, well, teams are picking in the waiver draft in the reverse order in which they finished the year before. And all of a sudden people were like, holy shit, Chris Osgood is going to be a New York Islander. They'd be stupid to not take him because they need somebody. And sure enough, let me get my date right here. September 28th, 2001, Chris Osgood is a New York Islander thanks to the waiver draft, and it was pretty wild. So, Michael, I mean, do you remember where you were? I mean, you were also pretty young at this time, but like, did this move register for you as a little kid?
Definitely, yeah. It was a subject of conversation. I think the last time I was here, we talked about myself and Nick Costa working at the Cheesecake Factory, and we were literally working at the Cheesecake Factory at this exact time.
That's
talking
funny.
about Yashin, Peca, and Osgood.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where I was.
That's awesome.
Trying to get people to relax and wait 45 to 60 minutes for a table of 4.
That's pretty funny.
There's a mall. Just go to the mall and your thing's gonna beep. Jeez.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This was early in sort of restaurant beeper technology. So I could see that.
I was cutting edge.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's just irritating. But anyway, but so Mike, where were you? I mean, was it as cool as Cheesecake Factory?
No, it wasn't. I was on my friend's screened-in porch, and I hadn't heard about it, I guess, until the next day, because I remember coming home from a soccer practice or doing baseball or whatever I was doing that night, and we were just kind of hanging out on his screened-in porch. I was waiting to get picked up by my parents, and I was just flipping through his family's copy of Newsday, and I read the article, and I was like, wait a minute. I know this name, and I know this player, and I know this helmet.
Yeah.
He's going to be an Islander, and all of a sudden, like, I got so excited. I got into my car. I remember like saying to my mom, who doesn't care about hockey, except that she knows how much it affects my mental health, that I was like, wow, the Islanders got this guy, Chris Osgood, whatever. And just remembered hearing like, yeah, you got to go home and just finish your homework. It's getting to be that time. But, and then one of my good friends at the time, his mom used to work as the nurse in Nassau Coliseum that would, if like a fan was not feeling well or whatever, or needed to like store medicine or something, she worked in that office. So she would always get tickets. And for his birthday party that year, we went to that Red Wings game, and I won't get ahead of it, but I remember going to, and you'll know what, if when I say that Red Wings game, I think everybody who was around knows what Red Wings game I'm talking about, and why we all still hate Brendan Shanahan. This was the beginning of it. And I think like 2 days after they got Osgood, his birthday party kind of came together, and he was bringing like 15 of us to that game, and I was so excited. I was like, well, I'm going to go get to see Chris Osgood play for the Islanders. Like, this team rocks right now. And this season, as I've said so many times on our podcast, this is what did it for me, right? Look, I'm going to explore whether or not that was a good or a bad thing. That you know, we when you talk about moments that turn you into a fan, everyone talks about them with, oh man, like that was a great thing being in the building for that game. But for the Islanders, I don't know if it was a good thing that I was, around this team and fell in love with this team. Who knows? That'll be a bigger existential question for a later project. But, just this was it for me. Like, and I think the Osgood, the Peca Yashin acquisition, of course, and then the Osgood kind of cherry on top. All of a sudden, I'm hooked, and there's obviously going to be a moment later in the season that takes it to a new level. But I owe a lot of hours and days and years of obsession over this team to Chris Osgood and this kind of summer that was a brilliant summer, maybe the Islanders' best summer ever, like for post dynasty in terms of like acquisitions and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, because like I remember again, like getting Peca and Yashin. I was reading in Newsday and following it, and after the season before, where they had traded, Luongo, drafted DiPietro, would seem very chaotic. This year, it was the exact opposite. Like now, you've got two proven guys, all stars. Yeah, fine, they were holdouts. I didn't care. Like these guys could have been wearing bandanas and cowboy hats and robbing banks. I didn't care because they were good at hockey, and they were on my team now. But there was a question of like, well, who's going to be in goal? Their defense was pretty good. They had Hammerlick and Acoin and Janssen, and they were looking pretty good. But who was going to play goal? And you tried to talk yourself into Garth Snow as the goalie, or hopefully this DiPietro kid works out. And then all of a sudden, here's Osgood. And again, like I remember that the anticipation of like, oh my God, this is going to actually happen. And then that just cemented like, this is the best summer ever. Like they got this guy. And the other thing too is that he came here. Like he could have just been like, I'm not going to the Islanders, right?
Did he hold out? Because I heard rumors. Nick and I were actually just like trying to remember together the other day. I was like in preparation for this appearance. I was like, he might have held out, or he registered that he wasn't really happy going to the last place team. You guys hear anything about that?
I mean, I don't remember it. I did find an article that maybe the Rangers were trying to trade for him to like back up or split time with Mike Richter. I don't remember that. There might have been a rumor at the time.
He did one of those interviews like where they're like, "Oh, how do you feel about leaving Detroit?" And he's like, "Well, I'm kind of bummed, and I'm going from a perennial Cup contender to a team I don't know anything about because I didn't even know they were a team for."
Right.
I'm actually just going to bring my red stuff over and play with my red pads. Hopefully, it's just a fever dream, and I wake up and I'm back here.
Yeah, and we're all here like massaging our temples, like not again. No, show them the schools.
This was also this was also the time when the Red Wings were in the Western Conference. So like talk about not knowing anything about the Islanders. This guy definitely didn't know. I mean, they probably played the Islanders twice a year, right? So and we'll talk about all those red pads in a little bit because that's a huge part of the story. But he eventually came here, and there was actually an episode of Be a Player, the NHLPA show that I know used to run on Saturday afternoons. I might be thinking of the NBA version of that show, but he talked about how excited he was. He talked about in fact, I found an article where he's like, "Oh, I think we're going to be pretty good this year." So immediately he was already doing the we thing.
What did you know about Long Island before you got here?
I knew nothing about Long Island. The day before the waiver draft, do you have any choice? Well, you could go here, name like 4 places, and I was like, Long Island, I don't know what to think about that. I know they finished like 30th the year before, which was dead last in the league. And I thought about it, and they had Yashin and Peca, and we got picked up a lot of good players, and couldn't have picked a better place to go, to be honest. Actually, we're kind of like Detroit was before we started winning. I mean, we lost a couple times in the first round, had some tough seasons, but we learned from that and then started winning the cup. And I think we're the same here. I mean, we got a good young team that's going to be good for a lot of years. And I haven't been here for them, but the drought's been for far too long, and we love to get ourselves in the playoffs. And when you get in the playoffs, anything can happen.
And I think he understood, like, once he got here that, like, these guys were kind of hungry to win. And God knows fans were hungry to win. So the season starts, and the Islanders are essentially a brand new team. Like, this is not the same team as before. I found an article at the New York Times. Oh, yeah, this was the quote here. The headline, by the way, is fantastic. Islanders stretch budget for Osgood. Because, you got to pay people to play for you. And he said, we should be looking at doing some big things this year. Don't underestimate us. Like, that's what you want to hear. Oh, my God. They had a new coach, obviously, and a guy named Peter Laviolette. And out of the gates, they come firing on all cylinders in a way that the Islanders hadn't, again, since the dynasty, going 11-1-1-1 in their first 14 games. We'll talk about that one loss in a minute. But, I mean, Michael, after working at, you're getting all keyed up, you and Nick at the Cheesecake Factory, you're getting all excited. And all of a sudden the team hits the ice and like they storm out of the gates. I think, what did they win? Like, I don't know, 7 games in a row, I think, at first. And then, you look back and it's a month in. Normally, the first couple months of the season are a disaster for the Islanders. But here it is, early November. They're in first place. They've got 1 regulation loss. And they look like a team that we had not seen in many, many years. Like, do you have any recollection of that early season run? Because it was really something special, and it was pretty wild.
It's a feeling that you have when, like me, you root for all the New York teams that never win. You just go like, who are these guys? This is this real? You have this very unbelief that happens, and it was very exciting. I don't think I went to any of those games in person, but I watched all of them.
Yeah,
it's just like, who are these guys?
That's how we felt. And the great thing about this too, and this is where again we got to what makes Osgood so special, is like, and we would learn this lesson years later in the recent history too, is like, when you're a hockey team, the goalie is kind of important, right? Like he's the guy who's doing a lot of the stopping of the pucks.
Unless it depends on what NHL you're talking about. Are you
Yeah.
talking about the real one that's played on the ice, or the one that's played over at the Athletic?
Right. I was gonna say, unless you write for the Athletic, in which goalies don't matter. But we're talking about the real NHL right now. Like, and every team has to pay two guys to stop pucks for them. And they want the best of those guys, and you hope that they work out. But when they don't, which is probably most of the time, it can be demoralizing, and it's pretty tough. And like the previous 7 seasons, you had Eric Fichaud, very young Luongo, who was just learning his way around, Kevin Weeks, who was just learning his way around,
Salo.
Tommy Salo, who was kind of a good player behind a very bad defense and a team that didn't score. Like it was kind of a nightmare trying to find hope and pray that, oh my God, please, please, please let this guy be good. Here comes a guy with 2 cups who frankly, again, had a reputation for being, he's kind of okay. And all of a sudden he solidifies a position that had not been solid since, Glenn Healy, almost 10 years earlier, Mark Fitzpatrick. Like that was enormous. And you could almost see it on the faces of the players. Like, holy crap, we have a guy who can actually stop pucks now. This is insane. And so for that reason, again, Peca and Yashin get all the spotlight, but man, the importance of Osgood in this era can't really be overstated. My God, like it was like night, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is how it's supposed to work. Oh,
yeah, he was so fun to watch too.
Yeah,
he even for that time he was like a throwback style, like stick save. You don't hear stick save very often, but you heard it a lot with him.
Right. Yeah, he was. You'd watch him. You're like, did the goal get bigger, or is this guy really like? Did he get smaller since the last time the puck was in the zone? Because there were times, like even just watching highlights of the season over the past couple of days, I was like, what are these? What's Sergei Fedorov doing? Why isn't he just shooting the puck to the gaping net there? Because Chris Osgood is so tiny and cute. Like it's just why is he shooting it right at him? But I think what you're saying too, the word that comes to mind is ingredients to me. Because when you've been a loser for that long, and the Islanders were losers for so long, ask Claude Lapointe, like he always said, like they're still treating us like losers.
Right.
You don't realize, and I think this is true about when Trotz came to the Islanders too. You don't realize like the importance of having all the ingredients for a winner. You need players like Yashin and Peca who could score. You need someone like Adrian Aucoin. You need that minute munching defenseman who you can just the coach can basically go to bed and Adrian Aucoin will and know that Adrian Aucoin can like play the next 22 minutes and be fine. Like you need that number one defenseman, and you need the goalie. Like you need a goalie that you could trust. And Osgood comes, and all of a sudden, not only is this team exciting, but you can trust the goalie. And what was like a kind of a little bit of a momentum train, all of a sudden it turned into a groundswell, I feel like, on Long Island, and it really hit a fever pitch at the home opener, which was against the Red Wings, of course.
Yeah, so let's talk about that game. This was obviously a monumental thing. Like Chris Osgood's going to play against the Red Wings for the first time in his career. And this was their one regulation loss, right? Of that crazy stretch, and
they lost in overtime. In overtime.
The overtime
loss.
Sorry,
yeah.
And and Brendan Shanahan played a role in that loss, and they played a hell of a game. And again, this is the defending, not the defending Cup champions, but still the team of
like the Tampa Bay Lightning-ish.
Right.
The Red Wings were. I feel like
they were the team of the era. The team that you had to beat, or the Penguins, from a couple of years ago. And so for the Islanders to even put up a fight against those guys was pretty remarkable, but they did more than that. They took them to overtime. They played them straight up even, and they lost. But it was monumental, and you were there.
Yeah, so and I'll never forget it for a lot of reasons. One, it was the first home game after 9/11.
Yes.
So there was that. And then the Islanders really set the bar high for me in terms of pre-game and game operations in this one. Michael Buffer did like a let's get ready to rumble thing. The Meadow from The Sopranos, Jamie Lynn Sigler sang the national anthem. I'm pretty sure Joan Jett introduced the players.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I'll have to. I'll find the. I'm sure I can find it on Sab's YouTube page. But and so it was just this balls to the wall. There was a bald eagle flying around the
That I
Coliseum.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and this big flag, and FDNY and NYPD guys waving the flag, and it was emotional. And and they announce Osgood. He comes out in his red pants.
Yeah.
Goaltender number 35, Chris Osgood.
Now Chris Osgood continuing to wear the red pads and red pants. I know it takes a while to break that stuff in, but there is superstition at work here too.
Yeah, I would say so. Things have gone so well for Chris Osgood up to this point. Why change? And so he'll take his time breaking in the other equipment. And this has been quite an atmosphere in this game, and to start this home season.
Certainly unprecedented since the Islanders' run to the Stanley Cup semifinals in 1993. That's the last time this building had anything resembling this atmosphere. And I don't know that even those games produce the same kind of energy that this one does, because it's looked at as really the beginning of something that hopefully is built to last.
Well, there have been so many positive things that have happened in a short period of time, and I think that's one of the things that's really got these people to come back and really support this team.
Let's go downstairs for the playing of God Bless America. And Joan Jett, Long Island native.
And the finest heroes to the whole world. The New York City Fire Department and Police Department, hockey teams, and the New York Police Color Guard.
The Islanders get the puck into the Detroit zone. Kavasha pries it loose and now looks for help. Wheels a backhander. Cherkovsky for Yashin. Wraps it in front. Deflected by Yashin. He gets it back. Now to Kavasha. He scores! 36 seconds in!
Why not have a start like this? The Red Wings try to clear the puck out of the zone. Good job by Kavasha to start things off. A point just gets it in deep, and away they go. You're going to see in front of the net, you're going to see, Kavasha will score, but Yashin make a great play. There's the good hard work. Here's the play coming up right here by Yashin. Look at him, knock the puck in front and then throw behind the back pass. Legacy is out of the way, wide open net for Kavasha. That was an easy one, and it's 1-0.
What happens 35 seconds into the game? Oleg Kavasha scores. So like all this and people crying and this entire coming together moment. Joan Jett, Meadow from The Sopranos, Michael Buffer, big flag, bald eagle flying around. Oleg Kavasha goal, and the roof just blows off the place. And I really do credit the Sean Bates goal to be like the seminal moment for me, I think, as a fan. But this was the one. This was the toe in the water before diving headfoot first, because that Kavasha goal, I just remember like looking to my right and just seeing popcorn and all sorts of like just limbs everywhere. It was a release. It was a huge just release into like the ether for so many people. And it felt crazy because that game was absolutely wild. Like you said, it went to overtime. It was a 5-4 game that I believe the Red Wings scored with, I want to say it was Luc Robitaille scored with like 15 seconds left in the game to tie it. So the Islanders took a late lead, and then the Red Wings scored. I think it was Kavasha. I'm looking now. So Kavasha scored with 3 minutes and 59 seconds left to give the Islanders a 1-goal lead in the third period. And then Robitaille scored with 10 seconds left, and then Yzerman in overtime. And Brendan Shanahan flipped everybody off skating off the ice on that night. Like, come on. So it was a crazy game. Yashin had a monster game. So it was just and doing it against this team, all of a sudden, not only are the Islanders exciting and maybe good, but if you could go toe to toe with this team,
Yeah.
what are we really getting at here? Could this really be happening?
Right.
So it was. That's a game I'm forever grateful to my friend Matt and his mom for putting that together, because what a time to be in the building.
Yeah. I was just looking up, the Islanders were 4-0 at the time. And in fact, Joan Jett did perform at the Coliseum parking lot before the game. So she must have also introduced the players. She's not from Long Island, though. I keep saying these she's from outside of Pennsylvania, apparently.
Yeah,
Right?
she lived on Long Island.
She lives on the island. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And
Because I think she actually lived in Rockville Center on a golf course, and there was like like when I was growing up, there was kind of a lawsuit about her building this house or something. Billy Idol used to live in Rockville Center too. He lived in Rockville Center for a little while.
Let Joan Jett build what she wants, just like Bo Horvat. Let them build what they want. It's okay. But before we go on, let's talk about the pad. So I remember this vividly. I think most Islanders fans at the time remember this vividly. Chris Osgood, blue, or white, number 35 jersey. And he had red pads and a red birdcage helmet, and he had them for a long time. And I mean, listen, the guy got picked up on waivers. Like, what are you going to do? It's like he's sitting around waiting, making this stuff, but it made for a really weird aesthetic, but it kind of almost represented that team. Like, this was a team of guys from different teams all put together that all of a sudden is coming. I mean, there weren't too many homegrown players on that team, almost none really. But they came together and played really, really well and gave, like we said, fans something to cheer for. Michael, can you picture, if you close your eyes, can you picture Chris Osgood with the red helmet, red pads? I think he had brown catching glove or whatever, and the blue jersey. Can you picture that in your head? Because I know I can.
I think I can picture it also with the orange jersey, which came out the following year.
Yes.
So yes and yes.
That's funny.
Well, the best part of that is a lot of team pictures, and like when you're taking pictures for player cards for tops or whatever, you do it right away in the season.
Yeah,
because they want to get that stuff out. So there's a lot of pictures of Chris Osgood in these red pads, because if you Google imaged him, like the picture for tops or Fleer or whoever's making NHL cards back then, a lot of them are going to have Chris Osgood wearing the orange, white, and blue and the red. And it looked like, Dan, I think you said it right. It was so perfect for this team that he did that, because and I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean this in a very, very good way. He just didn't belong here.
Right.
He did not belong Chris Osgood did not belong on the New York Islanders at this time. And I'm saying that from the bottom of my heart as a compliment.
Right.
That a player like that, of that caliber, did not belong here. Yeah. And if you remember too, it pissed off Gar Snow that he was there, because Gar Snow was coming to the island to be the starting goalie and Rick's mentor, and Gar Snow also had psychotic pads too. So we had Chris Osgood in his red pads for this chunk of the season, and then we had Gar Snow wearing the abominable snowman gear.
Snowman. Yeah. Those are great.
Crazy. And could you think of two more different goalies? Like, you got this pipsqueak, all quickness and guile, and then Gar Snow, who basically wore samurai gear under his jersey to make himself so big that nobody could score.
Yeah. But they came together. They were friends, apparently. We'll talk about some of the pranks, a particular prank that Osgood talked about in a video that got pulled on him with the Islanders. Yeah, this team was something else, man. They were really good. They, again, wasted no time in getting good. We saw the Trotz team take a while to get really humming, but these guys came flying out of the gates. But of course, the other side of that coin is that they hit the skids. And through December, January, February, things were off. Things were weird. Maybe the excitement of the season, maybe the excitement of seeing Joan Jett in the parking lot at Nassau Coliseum before the home opener kind of wore off on them. And things started to get a little bit wacky towards the middle and the end of the season. But they pulled it together. And they almost won the division. I will say this till I'm blue in the face. They almost won the division. They came with a point, I believe, of the Flyers winning the division. Osgood in the regular season played I believe, I meant to look this up, but I believe this is still an Islanders record, 66 games. I mean, Peter Laviolette wasted no time in putting this man to work. 66 games. Yeah, this was the era, obviously, of Martin Brodeur playing every game for the Devils. With 66 games. He went 32, 25, and 6, the .910 save percentage, and a 2.50 goals against average. I mean, these numbers are good. They're not mind-blowing. He wasn't nominated for the Vezina or anything. But compared to what the Islanders had before in goal, holy shit, this guy was a superhero, right? Like, this is crazy. And they go to the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. We've talked about the playoff clinching game against Washington. They had, 3 stars be Claude Lapointe, Kenny Janssen, and who else? Who was the third? Oh, Steve Webb. Steve Webb, who was really the only kind of homegrown guy, come out as the 3 stars. And they go to the playoffs, and without Chris Osgood, this would not have happened. This would not have happened at all. And their opponent, the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, Michael, take me back to this playoff series. Your team, you're in high school. Your team's getting ready to go to the playoffs for the first time in your lifetime. You could remember them playing. They have a good team. And, I mean, where are you at this point? What's your excitement level? What is your kind of hope level? And, I mean, what do you think this team was going to do once they got there? I mean, you never really seen a playoff game at that point, right? I mean, I can't imagine you had too many memories of it.
I'm like memorizing dialogue to do As You Like It at Holy Trinity Diocesan High School in Hicksville, New York. And I'm like, I was a theater kid, so I was there all the time, and I was literally like sitting around waiting for rehearsal and like trying to read up on it in the library. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a tablet. So it was just, I was one of a small group of theater guys that were trying to stay abreast of this. And I would get home like almost like game time, if I remember correctly. I think it was like in the middle of actually doing one of these shows. So like I was actually there for rehearsal and stuff a lot. And I was not doing my homework. I was just I was way too invested. I was totally engrossed. And yeah, I remember the infamous press conference. I of course read about it all later on, but all of the shenanigans that went on, it was very emotional. And I that might have been the beginning of feeling like as an Islander fan, like the whole league was against us, but that's a tale as old as time.
I was going to say that is a feeling that still exists to this day, particularly with this stupid team. I was at game 3 of this series. The Islanders were down 2-0 going into that game. And you thought, I waited 7 years for this. But boy, they showed up in game 3. They won 6-1. Mark Parrish had 2 goals in that game. Mike Peca was a machine. I remember he was my favorite player at the time on the team, and he was just awesome. He was all over the place. Chris Osgood made, I want to say, 35 saves in that game. Like, he was really good. 34 saves. He was really super good in that game.
Back in by Toronto. Domi, good hustle. No icing because of that hustle. He picked it loose. The pass comes to McCabe at the line. Shot right to the net. And somehow Osgood saw that through a big crowd in front of him and caught it.
That was a good stop, much more difficult than it looked because it did go by 4 or 5 people, 2 or 3 on each team. Roberts throws it out. McCabe gets the shot through. 2 Leafs, Domi and Roberts try to get their stick on it, but can't. And Osgood, who's been pretty sharp, 21 saves.
Without him, they're not here. And that game really started turning things around. Of course, game 4, the infamous Sean Bates game. And which is a Shakespearean game in and of itself, but a storyline all its own. And they go back to Toronto, they lose, they come back, they win game 6. Obviously, this is a very, very curt retelling of this insane playoff series. Tons of fights, tons of penalties, assholes, frankly, on both sides of the teams. Although, of course, the Leafs guys are bigger assholes because they're the Leafs guys. And they've got, that stink on them even back then. And it was just nuts. But they get to game 7. And as we talked about in our Kit Miller episode from last season, they put up a valiant fight, but unfortunately just didn't have enough. But I remember at the time thinking, this team can do great things. And if they just hold it together, they can be pretty good. And thinking that Osgood would be around for a while. It was funny in thinking about this episode, though, it occurred to me something that I had never thought about before. And people are going to hear this and be like, you never thought of that before? This was 2002. The Red Wings would go on to win the Stanley Cup over the Carolina Hurricanes, who beat the Leafs in the conference finals. We could have gotten a Stanley Cup final of the Detroit Red Wings versus Chris Osgood and the New York Islanders.
Wow.
Like, could you imagine? Oh my God. That would have been a 30 for 30. Like, this guy, he gets picked up on waivers. The next thing you know, he's in the Cup finals against a team that he won 2 cups with. Not long. I mean,
he goes on the last place team and takes them all the way to the. I mean, it's like a Disney movie.
My goodness. That would have been fantastic. I had never thought about it. Had you guys ever thought about that before? I never thought about it.
You just kind of blew my mind, Dan.
I wouldn't have thought. I never thought of it as like that storyline. I wonder if he would have brought out the red pads for that.
Set him on fire.
Time he was wearing the navy ones, but
right.
If I do remember feeling, and this was probably 4 or 5 years later, maybe during that like lockout year, thinking, did I not understand that 2001 or 2002 was their best chance in my lifetime to win the Stanley Cup, and that it'll never happen again? And that feeling didn't go away for a long, long time, because it took for a very long time for the Islanders to win a playoff round. Like that Game 7, and having Chris Osgood and Alexei Yashin, who was on song all season. He was so good that season. Mike Peca was so good until the cheap shot from Tucker and Janssen. Like they had we were talking about ingredients. Like, this team had all the right ingredients to win a Stanley Cup. It would have been a team that people would have been surprised by it when it happened, but at the same time you would have looked back and be like, yeah, no, it makes sense. Like, they had everything that Stanley Cup teams kind of need. And that is part of the Shakespearean season, is that feeling that I might have, it might have happened so quickly, and the rise was so meteoric and quick and emotional, and there was so much going on in it that I might have missed the forest for the trees here. That was it. That was the height for me as an Islander fan. I'm gonna die, and the Islanders are going to. That'll be as close as they ever get to a Stanley Cup. Of course, that's just how you feel when you don't see your team win a playoff series for the first 26 years of your life, basically. so that feeling doesn't, that's why it sounds crazy, but it really wasn't in 2012 when you're thinking like that. It really wasn't when you're explaining to your friends in college who were Bruins fans and Ranger fans and Devils fans. Oh yeah, you guys think winning Stanley Cups is cool? Let me tell you about the time that the Islanders almost won a round against the Maple Leafs with Chris Hoffman's goal.
Yeah, right. But that's the thing about this team, is it really like rejiggered how people thought about the Islanders. Like, it was, these 3 guys came in, and it wasn't just them too. Again, we've talked about Adrian Aucoin a lot. We talked about Roman Hammerlick. We talked about Dave Scatchard, Mark Parrish. Heck, even though like Kavasha had a good season, there was a ton going on, and it really, it made you think about the Islanders in a different way. Like, something else was possible other than being out of the playoffs before Christmas, which was the only thing that we had known for 7 years. And so we go into 02-03 with high hopes. Stop me if you heard this before. Oh man, this team could win the cup. This team is going to be good. Finally, we have expectations. And that team was pretty good. They weren't as good as the season before, but again, compared to Islanders teams of the recent past at that point, having 83 points and going 35, 34, 11 and 2 to make the playoffs is pretty good. They finished 3rd. The problem was that their very important goalie was going to be a restricted free agent at the end of the year. And this is where I get a little bit regretful, because I wish I had paid more attention to this, because it would have become very helpful later on. But he was going to be a restricted free agent. and they, in fairness, I think maybe they thought maybe there was some labor strife happening or whatever. Actually, there was no salary cap at this time, so they didn't, thought he was gonna want too much money. I feel like by this point they had given Yashin his big 10-year contract. Peca was on a big contract as well. And so Osgood now also was facing injury problems. He played how many games? I want to say 40 something games that second year. He played 37 games, was 17, 14, and 4. Missed a bunch of time with some injuries. And all of a sudden, the question of what do we do with this guy started to pop up. And as Michael said off the top, as good as the move was to get Chris Osgood in the waiver draft, kind of a no-brainer for Mike Milbury, the decision to give him up in March of that year, I guess around the deadline, must have been a tough one. And it's tough. Like, it's he's going to be a free agent. He's going to want a lot of money. Restricted free agent obviously means that he can't really go anywhere, and you have to negotiate with him, or you could just trade him. And so Mike Milbury traded him with a 3rd round pick to St. Louis, who turned into a player named Konstantin Barulin for the Blues, for a 2nd round pick, who became future Blackhawks coach and Islanders farmhand forever, Jeremy Colleton, and a guy named Justin Papineau. And we're not going to get too far into these guys because they're probably going to get episodes of this series on their own. But Michael, you talked about, Milbury making this trade. Am I to infer then that this was not one that sat well with you?
Yeah, I was concerned. I was disenchanted.
Yeah,
but certainly,
shocking.
But in the years since, it's just
Right.
just another on a very long list of Hall of Fame caliber guys that he let go, and would gets very defensive about now if he's asked about any of these decisions.
Yeah, because he wasn't the guy pulling the trigger. And again, like we get it. Like now we have like a frame of reference for what it means to have to sign a guy who's a free agent and stuff like that. But at the same time, you do wonder, like, dude, do you know how important this guy is? And maybe he didn't want to stay. I don't know. Who knows? But this is really sort of the 2002-2003 season, second half, is really the beginning of the Rick DiPietro era. Like, he played before all this, but Rick came in and Chris Osgood was never seen again, except for when he played for the Red Wings again. Mike, like, what did you think? I mean, you were the guy. This guy had meant so much to your Islanders fandom, and now all of a sudden it seems like in the blink of an eye he was gone. How did your brain process this back then?
Yeah, I was confused, I think, more than anything. Because I knew there was a reason, and I remember watching the game after, or the broadcast, when they kind of explained what was going on and being like, who cares? Like, he's Chris Osgood, and you just traded him for nothing. And the Islanders had also traded for Yanni Ninnema.
Yes.
And so they traded Brad Isbister for Yanni Ninnema at the time too, and I loved Isbister. So I guess because I was kind of young and didn't understand, like you said, the business element of what it means to try to get someone before a contract ends. And I was confused and mad. And the season already had a weird feel to it because Peca, of course, missed the first half of the year. Yashin was kind of struggling.
This was the year he hurt his wrist.
Yeah.
And they went out and got Cliff Ronning.
Right. And it was just a weird season, I think, in general. For like that 2001-02 team they were just full of moxie, and they had a chip on their shoulder. And once you play that card, you can't really play it the second year too. Like you kind of have to just grow from there. And it felt like without that intangible, this team just didn't have as much oomph to it at all. And that was it ended up being a weird season. Obviously, Laviolette goes at the end of the year. They lose pretty quickly in the first round of this playoffs, and you just the goaltending situation too ends up being Snow and DiPietro, and you've heard so much about Rick, and he's got these. Speaking of pads, like he's got these like flashy pads. He's this young kind of hot shot.
Snow played most of that playoff series, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. And it felt like the Islanders made themselves worse almost when they didn't need to. you understand why now. You understand why they did it. I mean, you gotta go get if you have a chance to get Justin Papineau, you gotta do it. But
Of course.
it didn't sit right with me at all. A lot of the season didn't, and then because you think about just the highs from that 01-02 season and the way that group just got along, and Dan sends over links to different things before these episodes, and I had seen the NHL Tonight special, All Access 2001, 2002, and most of the focus is on the basically a frat house that housed Eric Cairns, Sean Bates, Mark Parrish, and a couple other guys, and Steve Webb, and one more guy I can't remember, but watching some of these other clips, like Osgood and Snow were in on it too, and this entire team was basically just a group of pranksters living on Long Island, where there just weren't eyes on them. So like they could they had to like they were basically college kids. Like they were their parents said, "All right, you're going to this weird land called Long Island. We'll see you in May when we pick you up." Nobody's like checking in on them, and they could kind of just get away with whatever they wanted. And that's how they treated the island. It felt like that the island was just like their playground. They were just driving around on the LIE, pulling pranks on one another. And
so Osgood did a video. So he's gotten into broadcasting. We'll talk about his sort of late career thing in a minute, but he got into broadcasting, and he told a story about a prank that Steve Webb pulled on him that is painful to listen to. But here he is telling the story.
And I'm driving home on Long Island Expressway. Now, New York traffic's bad. And I'm like, my underwear was lined all over, so if you can imagine, with A535. A535 is one step below Tiger Bomb, if everybody knows what that is. So both are very, very, very hot when they're on your shoulders and knees. So when they're inside the lining of your underwear, it's even hotter. Doesn't feel good. Don't try it at home, trust me. Well, I'm driving down the freeway, not really driving because it's a stopped traffic, so I'm in there forever, realizing I'm overheating. And it like almost brought me to tears. I couldn't go anywhere, I'm stuck in my vehicle. To this day, and when I talk to these guys or see them, I still tell them the best prank ever that's been pulled on me, or I don't have the heart to do it to somebody else because I know the pain that I had to go endure for like about a half hour. Can't move, I'm in the vehicle, there's nowhere to go other than I had the air conditioning cranked and my leg up, and remember I was in traffic, my leg's up like this, just trying to somehow cool down. Unreal, but Steve Webb, congratulations, you are number one of all time.
Yeah, I would not want somebody to put Tiger Bomb or whatever the hell it was in my underwear and then get on the Long Island. I don't know where he was going, that he was on the Long Island Expressway. He might have gotten his Long Island Rail
for 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could get stuck there no matter what, but like, was he coming from Queens? Was he coming from Yankee
you got to pick
Stadium?
your times. You just got to know.
Exactly. So,
and I think Webb got that from Revenge of the Nerds. Didn't the Nerds do that? They put liquid heat on the jocks.
Did they?
And they stirred it all up like a salad, and then
they were just a bunch of goofballs, and they had a lot of money, and they were
basically
I think that this when now in this age of media, like you hear stories from guys making like podcast appearances and stuff, and I think this group, and Sean Bates talks about it a lot. Like I wonder if this was for a lot of them like one of their favorite years, because in addition to them, being in the hockey wilderness of Long Island at the time, but it was also before the age of everything kind of gets out because people have cameras in their hand at all times and 24/7 news cycle, all that stuff. So like you could be Sean Bates and you can go to a bar on Hempstead Turnpike with Eric Cairns, and sure, a couple guys might see you, but that's about where it starts and ends. And you can
maybe someone has a disposable camera.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they'll find out about it in 2 weeks when the photos get developed and stuff. Did I ever tell you the time that I saw Eric Cairns and Sean Bates at Miller's Ale House?
Right.
So this team like kind of adopted that ethos of just benevolent dirtbags, I guess is a good way to say.
And if you ever want to see those disposable camera photos, you can go to Vincent's Clam Bar in Garden City, where they're all on the wall when you first walk in. That's all of them. But yeah, no, it was a fun team. It was a fun team full of fun guys.
Yep.
And
the Island embraced him. This was the first team the Island embraced, like talking about Vincent's Clam Bar.
Yeah.
I'm sure that when Mike Watt was around and Wade Flaherty, and they called Vincent and said, hey, can we get a table? They're like, nah, you got to wait 45 minutes. But in this season, Sean Bates and Chris Osgood called. They get the red carpet rolled out for them because the Islanders were winning. The Island was back. We're back.
It was back for the first time in 10 years.
And then after the Wang honeymoon, it was just cap floor and we can't have nice things.
Right. Well, like Mike said, Laviolette was gone. Now Osgood is gone. So let's talk about that. So they traded him to St. Louis, which, for a guy who used to play for the Red Wings, had to be, if he thought coming to Long Island was weird, I can't imagine what he was like in St. Louis. And he was only there for 9 games at the end of the 2002-2003 season. And then the next season, he played 67 games. So one more game than he played that first year with the Islanders. And did well. 31, 25, and 8 for the Blues that year. And that's even, when they do a Weird Blues podcast, he'll probably be the first episode. But so it's funny. So I should mention at this point, I didn't get to mention it before, but normally Weird Islanders, the podcast, has we have kind of a loose rule about, guys got to play less than a season with the Islanders in order to qualify. Osgood is at 103 games. That's a lot, mainly because of that first season where he played 66 of them. But I don't think anybody would argue that this guy wasn't a weird Islander. Like, it's still weird to this day.
The red pads.
Exactly. The red pads, the jersey. And like Mike said, this was a guy of a caliber of player that the Islanders just shouldn't have had, basically, at that point. Didn't feel that way. But in 2005, he decided to right all of these weird wrongs and once again return henceforth to where he came from and signed with Detroit as a free agent, this time as their starting goalie. So he signed there in August of 2005, ended up winning the cup with them again in 2008, kind of writing again, his own story, kind of fixing that. And then he retired in 2011 after playing another 6 years in Detroit. And he ended up his career numbers, two stints in Detroit, 565 games, 317 wins, 149 losses, 75 ties. That is the mark of a team that is really, really good. When you win 317 and only lose 149. With the Islanders, things are a little bit more modest. 103 games played, 49 wins, 39 losses, 10 ties. Again, a team that was really good, but maybe not good as they could have been, or maybe as good as we like to remember. And then with the Blues, just that 76 game run of 35 wins, 28 losses, 10 ties. So this is a guy who is remembered as a Red Wing. Red Wings fans love to debate whether or not he belongs in the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to do it because, frankly, I don't care. But as an Islanders Hall of Famer and as an important Islander, Chris Osgood is on a level that I think few people match. And I know it was only a season and a half, but again, when we were talking a bit off the top, the importance of this guy coming here, it was almost like Peca and Yashin combined. Because like those two guys were really good. Like, oh my God, you got first two centers in a single day, that a weekend. That's incredible. But like to get a goalie of Chris Osgood's stature, and like again, the debates have raged forever of this guy's entire career, how good he actually is. I don't care, because to me, he was the best goalie I had seen in my lifetime at that point, and it was pretty wild. So, I mean, Michael, like, what do you think? We talk about this all the time, and Osgood is another one of these guys. What do you think Chris Osgood thinks his Islanders legacy is? Like, does he sit around? I'm sure he's had Islanders fans be like, oh, yo, man, I loved you when you played. So he probably blows him away. But like, do you think that he sits around thinking, man, that year and a half I spent on Long Island was pretty special? I mean, I hope he thinks, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's spoken of it pretty recently. He talks about how, you hear this a lot, like, oh, I had no idea, what Long Island was geographically or what was going on over there. Right. Yeah, I think he thinks of it as just a good time. He had a fun year and a half over here. I don't know that he sees it in the light that we do, that he completed this transition to respectability that we had so briefly. But yeah, I'd love to see him at UBS. It would be delightful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wave to the crowd. Has he ever gotten? I don't know. I haven't been to a game against the Red Wings since probably the '90s. Has he ever gotten like the TV wave treatment, like the Chico Resch treatment? They always put Chico on TV and he always waves.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Not that I know.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, because it would have made the rounds. But he does talk about it. I watched some Red Wings games like throughout the season too. Last year, especially during the Islanders 4-month playoff stretch, the Red Wings were one of the teams that they kind of had to compete with for a little bit there in February and early March. And I feel like just through the years, I've heard him talk about it a little bit. And I think, like Mike said, it's so funny that all these guys are just like, yeah, no idea of anything, what Long Island was like or anything about it. Like, they're one of 30 teams in the league at the time. Like, you had to have been there. But they all say the same thing. Hey, we didn't really go beyond the Marriott. You just kind of got changed at the rink and went back to the hotel or took the bus to the Garden City Hotel, depending on if they're a big market or small market team. And that was it. And then, he but everything else I've heard him talk about, it's all been that nostalgia. I don't know if he maybe feels the same way about that season as we do, which was that it was magical and not that many people outside of the island realize it, because a first round exit is a footnote for the rest of the league. But for that team at that time, it was a massive, massive deal. And those guys were basically treated like the dynasty guys were. I feel like that season, you could go into Mats Lindgren could walk into a deli and everyone would let him cut the line and he wouldn't have to pay. Someone would try to pay for, I'm sure Dick Tarnstrom didn't pay for a beer during his tenure, because that team just showed people why the Islanders are so special and why people who love the Islanders love them with so much. And I think for a guy like Osgood who had so much success in Detroit, it probably was a little eye-opening. Like, I'm treated pretty good in Detroit, but the expectations are, it's almost like it's a very different feel. It's almost being like a football player at Alabama or Notre Dame or something, where it's you're on the team, and if things are going well, it's you're just kind of doing your job until you win the championship. Then we have a party for you, and then we do it all over again. Whereas you go to the Islanders and you go to Long Island, and it's you're almost like an invading army, like liberating a land.
Right.
We got to watch extra games after the regular season.
I know.
You?
Right.
You're amazing.
Wow. Games in the spring that matter. Holy crap, that's crazy. I think it's good that he recognizes that, and like you said, I think that is important. Like, oh my God, you realize just how you have kind of been airdropped onto a different planet, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, these people like hockey here. Holy crap!
I don't know if he understands what his legacy is. Yeah, but I think he would appreciate. He definitely appreciated his time, and still does. And I'm sure that he still keeps in contact with some of the players.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure that there's a group chat or something with Osgood and Snow and like Steve Webb or something.
Yeah. Well, somebody puts
once or twice a year they talk, and
somebody puts icy hot in your underwear. You're linked to life, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But so I think it's two different questions. I think he definitely knows that he definitely appreciates and understands that he had a special season, and probably appreciates it. But I don't think he would understand that on a this the same thing we say every episode, basically, that there's going to be three dudes spending an hour of their night talking about just how important Chris Osgood was to their life, to our life.
I mean, I love him for many reasons, but including the fact that he grew up loving the Edmonton Oilers and then had an elite NHL career, never playing for said team and being perfectly okay with that.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah, you don't
classy.
You don't hear that. Yeah, I know. Go figure
how that works.
You didn't have to return home. for something. But I think he did pretty well in Detroit and to a lesser extent Long Island and to an even lesser extent St. Louis. But yeah, this is this guy. I'm glad I'm really, if anybody at Islanders game ops is listening to this, if Chris Osgood is in the building next time the Red Wings play there doing their TV, put the man on the Jumbotron.
Yeah.
Let him get a round of applause. I guarantee you that at least a third of that building is going to be like, oh shit, Osgood is here. And then they're going to get dads going, that guy played for the Islanders. It was a great season. They made the playoffs. It was unbelievable.
They might be wearing his jersey. Like there's
Yeah.
the name Osgood with the 35 on those navy and white jerseys.
Good.
Also, it just looks good.
Yeah.
That jersey to me is just, it's a work of art. It's aged really well. I love seeing people wearing the Osgood jerseys in the halls of the Coliseum and UBS all these years later. Because that guy just he was pretty cherished.
And any goalie wearing the birdcage mask is immediately awesome. So they
remember when DiPietro, when
a
decade later thought, how about hey Rick, things aren't working out for you. All these injuries. This is probably the last kick at the can. And he thought the key was, I don't know if I'm seeing the puck too well through my like floppy mask, and I think this one might help with my concussion issue. So I found Ozzy's old mask, and
that's funny.
Good God, and God love Rick for doing that. Like that to me is such a good Rick DiPietro, and tells you, like,
I was gonna say
for all of the Rickisms, he did appreciate being an Islander, and the fact that he went to Chris, he probably had like a Chris Osgood shrine or something that he like nodded before, and I don't know.
That was
love him for that.
Rick's great year in Bridgeport, but yeah, that definitely illustrates a lot about Rick too. Is no, it's just the mask. I just got to change the mask.
Yeah, it's just the mask. Rick.
Two quick fun facts before we start to wrap it up. Number one, getting back to that playoff series real quick. So the Islanders scored 21 total goals in that series. The Leafs 22. Like, that's how close that series was. Basically, all things told, it came back to a matter of one goal. And again, that's due to Cujo on one side was really, really good, and Chris Osgood on the other side probably was even better because the Islanders, were kind of coming from behind there. But it was a pretty tight series. Also, I have to note, although sadly I do not have evidence of this anymore, Chris Osgood is one of the very, very, very select group of Islanders, definitely less than 12 that I can think of off the top of my head, to have had action figures made of him. One of the early McFarlane hockey figures was of Chris Osgood. I had it. I combed my basement, my many boxes of toys. I could not find it, although I did find a number of stupid John Tavares toys, but that's a whole other story. And I could not find
it right now.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah. So it's sitting there right in between. It's right next to an autographed picture of Freddie Gibbs on my little shelf up there that I look at. But so this is how I got it. It's if you go Google eBay and type in Chris Osgood beer tap, you'll see that somebody took all those action figures and put them on, taps that you pull for pints.
Weird.
And so that's how I had to get it.
It's so odd.
Yeah, and I've had it for I've probably had it for 3 or 4 years now, and it's I look at it every.
That's amazing.
Every episode, yeah, it's him doing like a pad stack, double pad stack.
I had it. I bought it from the Sunrise Mall because I'm like, oh shit, there's an action figure. I mean, they had a couple of like starting lineup figures, but those were cool because they were like more realistic.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the red pads; it was the blue.
No, I know that is. Maybe I can I'll have Isla like paint them or something.
Yeah, customize. That's funny.
But like a lot of times I'll look at that and I'll just shake my head.
Yeah.
And I do this a lot of times when I see Osgood jerseys in UBS Arena, just like shake my head and be like, can't believe that guy was an Islander.
I can't believe they made an action figure of him. That's how he wasn't an Islander for long enough, but he was there long enough to make an action figure of him. But anyway, I wish I could find it. I have a whole basement full of toys, but he's not there. I don't know why. Michael, I hope you have had fun in your return episode, and you picked a great one. Again, Mike was very, very excited when this came around. And we've been probably waiting for a while to get Osgood. I'm kind of surprised he was still on the list. So what's new this season on Ted and Michael Read Sketches into Microphones? It's a very funny podcast. I mean, I know everybody listens to different kinds of podcasts, true crime, all this kind of stuff. Your wife obviously has her true crime podcast. It's great to have something that's funny, that's like genuinely funny and creative and different. And that's what Ted and Michael is. So I recommend everybody subscribe and listen.
It's a lot of work. It's it's writing and casting and editing. I mean, they're fully produced pieces. And we're really proud of it. It's our 4th season. I think we finally really figured out how to do it. It's not exclusively about sports, but there's a lot of sports related content. We have one promo for this season, and it's a parody of Major League.
All right, guys. I figure it's going to take 32 more sketches to make season 4. Every time we record, we peel a section.
We play ourselves, but as ghosts after we've both been electrocuted.
That's one, my friend. And the Bobcat has glasses and a top hat, but he can't steer the car. No thumbs.
That's 5 down, 27 to go. Then the Count turns to the crowd and yells, "Dijon is the noblest of mustards." And at that moment, he realizes the princess was actually made of straw.
A gasp is heard. And we reveal that Ethan was holding the pickle the entire fucking time. That's our ending. Print it.
It's beautiful.
And I made Michael Lieboff listen to it as soon as we finished.
Yes, I did. I listened to that on my flight to the Ozark.
Nice. Yeah. We have
go.
2 sketches called Inappropriate Sports Announcers. And I do one character based just on the Tavares press conference voice.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a guy, a professional athlete, but that's his life all the time is he acts like he's in a press conference. So we do a sketch this season where he breaks up with his girlfriend, but it really kind of just sounds like he's retiring from the relationship.
That's really funny. I can't wait to hear it. Again, it's a very funny show. It's super creative. It's awesome. And I mean, I'm glad you guys are doing it, and I'm glad you keep doing it. And I hope to have you on again. And are you guys season ticket holder? Did you get season tickets again this year?
I didn't renew for this year.
It's a shame for me to hear.
I'm gonna miss our intermission hangs, Mike.
Yeah. That's where Mike would come and deliver me and my dad some snacks. And
That's true.
Then my dad would regale him stories about how he was in a car that the Arab Spring, that Arab Spring story that in Libya that I told on the podcast a few months ago. Of course, Mike's told first to Mike.
Mike's
Smith.
dad is also great at negating any compliments you say to Mike. So at one point I was like, Mike, your memory, I'm so bad with names, and your recall is unbelievable. You can throw out these hockey names that nobody's thought about for decades. And I guess that's kind of where like Weird Islanders come from. Like your memory is incredible. And your dad was like, it's not that great. He's just putting it on.
That's funny. Well, that's what dads do.
Just
right?
keeping you humble.
Yeah,
exactly. Right, making sure you don't get too big a head. But my dad would say the same thing. Just remind you just one more time not to get too comfortable.
I'm working on impressions of you both, but they're works in progress. But Mike's would definitely be an enthusiastic, semi-monotone, and just again throwing out names, just names and dates, games that he wasn't even alive for. Doesn't matter. And Dan, it's just going to be an exasperated. My favorite phrase that you use, whether you're talking about bad neutral zone transitions or bad sports journalism, you use the same phrase, which is, what are we doing? I mean, we're still writing about Kyle Dubas like he's some unsung hero. What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I use it all the time. I say that. I say that to my wife all the time. We watch Real Housewives. What are we doing here? What are we doing? What are we doing this for? Why are we here? Nothing drives me crazier than like bad TV, especially like this is my free time. What are we doing? I said that we're playing games too. What are we doing here? Why do I have to talk to this guy? Get me out of here.
So that's if you're George H.W. Bush and I'm Dana Carvey, that's my wouldn't be prudent at this juncture. That's my hook.
But well, that's great. I mean, keep working on it, but I think you got us under control there.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear you unleash those, and I can't wait to hear more Ted and Michael read sketches into microphones, and look for it in your favorite podcast app because it is really great. And thanks for coming on. This is always fun. We'll get you on again.
Thank you guys.
The other 2 choices you had were also great. So expect another email or DM very shortly.
Please.
Michael Lieboff, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Read his work and listen to his work at Action Network. Any final thoughts on 103 glorious games, some in red pads, of Chris Osgood, New York Islander.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's
more thoughts.
I think when you and I started to formulate the idea of this podcast, Weird Islanders, the podcast, there were a couple images that just popped into my mind right away. And one of them was this diminutive goaltender, better known for winning Stanley Cups with the Red Wings,
right,
skating out to an absolutely massive pop at Nassau Coliseum on October 14th, I think, 2001, for the home opener in what ended up being a magical season, and the season that turned me into a fan. So, I owe a lot to Chris Osgood. I think this podcast is more inspired by Chris Osgood than he would know, than I would like to admit. I think he's a really, when we're talking about the best of the Weird Islanders, he's probably the goaltender for that team. And there was just very, very little not to like about this guy's tenure on the Islanders. It ended the way it ended, but that's Mike Milbury than anything else. And just seeing, I will never not smile when I'm walking behind a Chris Osgood jersey in the hallways of UBS Arena. He just brightens my mood. So the helmet, the pads, the good goaltending, and the great season. Here's to you, Chris Osgood.
It's the perfect 2-syllable chant after the organ.
It is.
Yep.
No,
yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
it's true.
And talking about Dan saying, game ops. Man, if you start playing the organ and showing Chris Osgood in his Fox Sports or Bally Sports Detroit polo or whatever when they come visit.
Oh yeah.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
And you know that Paul Cartier has been waiting to do it.
No, but like some goalies lend themselves to that. Ozzy,
Yep.
obviously one. Varley, obviously another one. But like Leonard, didn't, it works, but it doesn't really, yeah.
Greiser,
yeah.
Greiser,
I guess
very forced, yeah.
Ilya kind of works.
Poulin.
Yeah.
I don't think he heard much of it.
No, he did not. Right.
Yeah, it was Ozzy and Nabby, like, and those two, like
Nabby,
Osgood and they feel very,
yeah,
kind of like they'd be the 1A, 1B on the Weird Islanders All-Stars.
Yeah. No, this has been a lot of fun. I hope you've all had a lot of fun listening. We'll be back again in a few weeks with another episode of Weird Islanders. Remember, patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety if you want to hear this show without ads and you want to get a bunch of bonus podcasts and written stuff. And who knows what else you might get if you sign up. Plan start as low as $2 a month. And a reminder that our first ever live event will be Saturday, March 30th at 4 p.m. at the beautiful brand new Offside Tavern in New York City. Around 4:45 or so, we'll start to record a live podcast that will be all about your Weird Islanders stories. So bring your Weird Islanders jerseys, t-shirts, swag, whatever you got, because we want to hear about it. That is Saturday, March 30th at Offside Tavern. Be there. It's going to be a great time. Our theme song is Knuckles by Bjorn Falk. Find more of his work at Bandcamp and on Spotify. Thanks a lot, and we will talk to you again soon. And until then, keep the Islanders weird. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.